Today we're going to look at what's in a great pitch deck, nothing else. We'll go through every single element of a pitch deck. I'll show you examples of great slides, a lot of fantastic slides from new pitch decks. These are real pitch decks from startups that have raised money recently. We're really getting a peek behind the scenes of what's happening right now when it comes to pitch decks and fundraising. I've looked at thousands of different slides to pick the best ones for this video. This is Raw Startup. And I promise you, I've been through this full journey myself. Everything from an angel round, from angel investors like NBA All-Star Carmelo Anthony or Skype founder Janos Fries, all the way to raising a mammoth $155 million D round from the big venture funds for Vivino. Yes, I've tried it all, raised over $200 million for Vivino and built so many pitches you wouldn't believe it. I've also helped startups, seen hundreds of pitches and thousands of slides. I think I know what works by now. Finally, in this video, I will show you what content you should focus on depending on what stage you're at. Your content might look very, very different for an angel stage company compared to a C round company. It's very important that you put the right content in depending on what stage you're at, and I'll show you exactly what that is. With that, let's get going and look at the 8 elements of a startup pitch. Motivation. Why are you doing this? First element is motivation. Why are you doing this and what are you trying to do? Even if you have a good story here, people sometimes make the mistake of building up a long story and spend too much time before they get to the point. This will not work with a pitch. You have to get to the point right away. You have 30 seconds to get their attention or you might lose them forever. So let's get them really interested in the first 30 seconds. You have to win the first 30 seconds. That's why you're here. You lose them here, you might lose them for good, and bye-bye investors. First, tell a story. Tell a story about why this is important, why this is a problem, and how you're going to change it. The slide itself is less important here. The story is important. In some cases, you can show a picture while you tell a story. And guys, I found the best one here. This particular one mentions the founder's mother in the first slide of the deck. I mean, if you can mention your mother in the first slide of a pitch deck, that's pretty good. Take a look here. This is Masaba. They make software for the liquor supply chain. Asai worked with his mother's liquor store. He's trying to help his mother. I mean, is there a better motivational story than helping your mother? With Vivino, I would usually tell a story about me being lost in the supermarket, not knowing what to buy, and show a picture of somebody or maybe me lost in the supermarket aisle. I would sometimes spice it up here a little bit by telling them how big the market is, that the wine industry is a $400 billion industry. We've now set the stage and hopefully the investors are really interested in seeing the rest of the pitch. Then there is the problem, the basic premise of the startup. Sometimes this is forgotten and we move straight into the product. Don't do that. Tell the problem first before you move into the solution, the product. Keep it simple. There's a problem and we're building the solution. Do assume that the people that are listening to you do not understand the problem as you walk into the room. They just don't know it. They're not in the same industry as you are. So tell the story and tell it well. Sometimes you can start with telling something that's broken in your industry. Organic Basics do sustainable basics like underwear. They start by saying what's broken with the current brands before they get into their current offering. In this case, the current brands are unsustainable, unethical, non-diverse, unable to transition to digital commerce. And then we have Rely On. They make planning software for employees. And I think this is a fantastic slide. The problem is that 82% of all this work is currently done in Excel or on paper. You're setting the stage for your competitor being something old and not so great. Kogo also does this well. They're an aggregator for mobility apps, apps for scooters and bikes, etc. They clearly state the problem of needing multiple apps, lack of transparency, and the annoyance of having to sign into multiple of these apps, something that a lot of us can recognize. Woo Storefront is more of a technical product, but they list the problem with the current products, simple and straightforward. This works, gets people into the problem, understanding the problem. Your goal here is really to get people nodding. So don't skip this part. If I don't understand the problem, how am I going to understand the solution? You might lose the entire premise of the pitch. Some people think this is the most important part of the pitch. If I don't believe there's a problem, why would I invest in a solution that I don't believe exists? Solution, product. Then we get to the solution of the problem, basically what we're building. This really depends on how far you are, but wherever you are, show them what you have or show them what you're building. Don't tell them, but show them. You may not have a product. Either way, be visual, show the mock-ups and explain how the product works. Okay, let's dig into the examples. Let's get back to Rely On. They do scheduling for teams. We saw this problem slide earlier, and boom, they move into these beautiful solution slides. You go from something that's quite ugly into a beautiful solution. That works pretty well. We also looked at Coco before, the mobility app. First you have the problem, then boom, you have the solution, and one app that solves all your problems and gives you a complete overview. With Organic Basics, they go from what the others are not to what they are. An inclusive, digitally native, sustainable brand. Good stuff. Let's take a few more. Here is Pastimes with their Outdoors app. They show the product, show the features, all the elements of the app, and can walk through this on the screen. Looks great and tells the product story in a very visual way. Then we have Slide. They replaced the old security tag with something more like an Amazon Go experience. First, they show the product. Then they explain what the product and the full platform can do. Generally, I would not use video in a pitch. They can do much of video before or after. When you meet investors, they're there to meet the founder, not to watch a video. However, sometimes it can work really well if you want to show something demonstrated in the field. In this case, Slide used the video to show exactly how the product works in a store. So it does make sense in this case. And if you choose to do it, keep it short. Very short. People will fall asleep and start checking their phones in seconds if you don't do a short video. And then we have the beautiful dating app Smitten. They want to show that their app looks beautiful and more fun than other dating apps. And finally, we have a more technical platform like Woo's Storefront. It is a little bit boring, but it's all about the audience. This slide shows what the product does, and the audience, the engineers, they will get that. And then to a tricky question here, should you do a live demo in a real meeting? Hell yes. If that makes sense, you should definitely do it. But do it so that it looks spontaneous, but actually you really practice the way through this. No spontaneous demos, and don't ask them for input. Just do something you practiced already. Live demos are super compelling, but they can be risky. Next, we have traction. How is the startup actually doing? Numbers on how we're doing. How many new users are we getting? How much are they using the product? How long are they staying? And what is the revenue? And so on and so forth. This is about showing how incredibly well your startup is doing. And this is quite simple. Show whatever puts your product, your startup, in the best possible light. Basically, whatever makes you look great. There is one thing about traction that makes it extra important. Traction overrides everything else, because if a product has traction, meaning the users are using or buying the product, then understanding the problem and solution matters less, because the users are telling you that this is a great product. Traction overrides everything else. So what do you show here? I like to show a minimum of two things: retention and activity. Retention means how long do people keep using the product. If users stay with the product for a long time, it shows that the product is a good product for the long term. Activity is how much these users are using the product, also showing a solid product. Some people would definitely put growth in here too, and I think that's okay, but growth is less important because you can get all these users if they don't stay and keep using the product. Retention and activity, it doesn't really matter. Okay, let's have a look at the slides. First, we have Adent Health. They make an app for dental care. This one looks great. Nice and simple as to show user growth and activity. No retention on this one, but the activity in this case is really, really healthy. Here's a pro tip on this one. Always make the slides tall, not wide. See what happens here? We stretch it out. Suddenly, the numbers don't look that good anymore. So tall, not wide. Then we have Prepio. They make onboarding software for employees. Again, a nice VC-friendly graph that shows their revenue. The org creates transparency for org charts. They show how many new users they get every month. Again, a nice and tall graph. They also show the growth in usage over time. This is Slide. They show totals instead. Both can work, but investors very often want to see things over time. That's what they show here, different kinds of performance. And having graphs for every single one of these would probably be too much. Finally, we have something that investors love with a passion: a growth flywheel. Can you find a growth flywheel where you put money, put resources in, and just keep growing and growing? In most cases, you really don't have a growth flywheel, but if you have one, you should definitely show it. One of the most famous ones is Amazon's growth wheel. It just keeps going and keeps going. Investors love that. The org has it in their presentation, but I can only show you part of it. But this is the basic idea. The key here is that once you get the growth flywheel going, it keeps going, and you grow and grow as you put more resources in. Next is the market. The market is important because a startup really isn't investable if the market isn't big enough. It really isn't something you should spend a lot of time on, but it is a box that needs to be checked. You have to show the market is huge, there's massive potential for a big company in this space. With the market, you really want to show two things. the market potential, but also the startup's position in the market. The latter is not always relevant. I also have a video on how to find total addressable market. You should definitely check that out. Cool, let's have a look at the market slides. With Vivino, we always had one slide. The market is huge and unconquered. It is a plus $400 billion market and nobody has really taken it yet. That's enough. It's simple and it tells the story. Another very typical way of doing it is like Finoprise does here. They're a service for impact investing. First, there's a big circle with the full market, and then they break it down to the market they're actually targeting. Oscar is in car rentals. They do a similar thing, but with different visuals. First, the full market, then they focus in on the geography where they want to focus. Plantura sells plants, and they do a similar thing too. Pastimes go straight to the numbers, and that can be very efficient too. You can also go really simple, and I like what Fine Matter does here. They sell jewelry online. It's simple. It's like saying huge market. Let's not talk more about that, which really makes sense. And then they say love and buy jewelry each year. Great to see some passion in here too. Finally, in the market, you can actually create some FOMO. Dating app Smitten shows how fast the dating market is growing, something that can really create FOMO, which is always good. Then we have the other part of the market, positioning. In a market with lots of competition, you want to tell the investors how you're positioning the startup, how this startup is positioned different than anyone else in the market. This is mostly when you attack an existing market. If it's a new market, positioning is less important. There is a typical structure to a position slide like this. You have a couple of vertical and horizontal axes. Then you put in there what you think is most important for the startup, how you differentiate from the competition. Then you put yourself and the competition in there. For organic basics, the dimensions are digital and not digital, as well as their core sustainable and not sustainable. They put themselves all the way up in the corner, being natively both digital and sustainable. Another way of positioning yourself is comparing features. Here's an example from Prepio again. They do a comparison, obviously non-biased comparison to the competition. This works well too. Sometimes you use features and sometimes you use dimensions. The market slide is required, the positioning is not. Sometimes it's just pretty obvious what kind of position you're taking. So that's really the market. This is a box that needs to be checked. We need to know the market's big enough and sometimes the position in the market. And remember, there's plenty of good markets out there. A market doesn't create a startup. If you want to win, that's all about execution. Next is business model and revenue. Now let's talk business model. Any startup is a business and at some point you have to make some money. And this varies a lot from startup to startups. Some companies are born with a business model, others wait very long till they actually make any revenue. You might well be pre-revenue and that's fine. A lot of startups wait a long time before they make any revenue. But even if you have a free app like Vivino, you have to have a pretty good idea about how you're going to make money at some point. So keep the slide in there even if you're pre-revenue. You have to show them how you're going to make revenue once you get there. And all startups are different here. If you're a B2B SaaS company, you're born with a subscription model, so you're born with a revenue model. For some people, this can be hard to understand, and it kind of reminds me of this clip.
Well, if so, how do you sustain a business model in which users don't pay for your service?
Senator, we run ads.
I see.
I mean, Zuckerberg's look here is just golden. And then you have the senator saying, I see, like he's some kind of professor. He clearly isn't. Sorry, but this clip really isn't that much off topic. You have to tell the investors how to make money. And for some people, that can be hard to understand. Pastimes has 3 different ways of making money: a marketplace, ads, and premium features. They put it really nicely on this one. Skin Bliss is an app for cosmetics, and they make money on user purchases and sponsorships. Slide gets very detailed and says how the money is made, but also gets into what the actual unit economics are on the different areas. I'll talk more about business model and revenue later in the video. It all depends on what stage you're at. Then we have the team. With the team, it also matters quite a bit what stage you're at, and we'll get back to that. The team slides really aren't that complicated. Show what kind of relevant experience the team has and really tell the story of why this particular team is uniquely qualified to build this particular startup. Take Plantura here. They managed to tell the investors that 2 out of 4 of the team are second-time founders, and the third has extensive startup experience. That is something investors really like to see. Pint Please do a beer app, and they focus on the extensive and years of experience that each of the team members have in their different fields, and obviously make it look pretty cool too. And finally on the team, don't go down the celeb route saying that Elon Musk is an advisor. What's important here is who is actually running the team. Don't mention 5 celebs that you had one call with. Fundraising plan and objectives. Next is, what is next? The fundraising plans and objectives. How are you going to invest the money and where will that take the startup? Obviously, the investors are really interested in knowing how the money is going to spend and what goals the startup expects to reach with that money. Finaprise does this really well. A very clear ask, but also say that some of the investment has been taken by other investors. So you better hurry up. Always good with some FOMO. They're also very specific on how the money will be spent in 3 different buckets. Next is dating app Smitten, and they have a little bit of fun by saying date us for $1.5 million. That is a pretty expensive date. Okay, good. Let's get to the second part of the video. I've had a look at every single stage for a startup, from idea to C round, and we have that on the horizontal axis. Then on the vertical axis, we have the 8 elements of content. Then we put a percentage on every single content depending on stage. I use a percentage because the number of slides in the deck can vary quite a bit. So just do some rough math from there. Okay, first we have the idea stage. You're presenting an idea, so there really isn't much of anything else. Basically talk about why you're doing this with the problem and solution, briefly show the market is big enough, and talk about the team. Team is the biggest thing here because it's all about the team. It's the only thing that's real at this stage. Can this team actually build what they say they're going to build? That's the big question. And then we have the angel round. And the only real change here is that we start talking about the business model and revenue. Team is still the key part here. Next is the seed stage, and things get a little bit more serious. Traction is shown for the first time. It doesn't mean product market fit, but it does mean that there's some sort of product in testing. Numbers may still be small, but there are some numbers that the investors can see. And here we are. We're at the A round, and the traction is now up to 20%. This means you do have a product market fit. Traction is expected here. Bevino had 1 million downloads when we did our A round. And at this point, things change a little bit with the problem. The problem becomes less important because if you have traction, there clearly is a problem. There's also more focus on business model and revenue. Doesn't mean you need a lot of revenue, but have an idea about what it's going to be and maybe some testing somewhere. And then we have the B round, and now the business model and revenue becomes important. You probably need to show some revenue numbers when you do the B round. There's also more focus on plan and objectives. You need to have a clear idea about how you're going to scale this business. And finally, you have the C round, and at this point, there's a lot of focus on the revenue, the business side of it, and preferably a plan to how you're going to build this into a really, really big business. And there you have it. You know exactly what to put in your pitch deck and how big each part should be. Good luck with building your amazing pitch deck. If you want more content just like this, please consider pressing like and subscribe so you won't miss any future videos. Thank you very much for watching Raw Startup. Now stop watching, go build something.